So it's the NFL draft tonight, and obviously we are
Mhm.
recording because I'm a Panthers fan, and they don't have a first round pick because they traded it.
Mm, true.
How are you as a LA guy, but a Washington transplant? Neither of the LA teams were there when you were growing up, or maybe the Rams were. I don't remember the timing, but obviously they left, came back, all that stuff. So where do you stand on NFL fandom?
I care about my fantasy team. The Rams left when I was 6. You might have still been 5, and I swore that they were dead to me. And the year they won the Super Bowl a couple years ago, I was all in on the Bengals. Obviously, the Rams won anyway. My younger brother's a Rams fan, but mostly I root for Miami Hurricanes in the NFL, and I root against my enemies, aka Notre Dame, UF, FSU, and Ohio State grads. So,
How'd you do in the fantasy playoffs last couple of years?
2 years ago, I lost to you in the finals. Last year, I lost in the first round of the playoffs. However, I would have beaten every other opponent had I
Who'd
been
you lose
matched up
to?
against them. You.
Yep. Welcome back to Working on the Dad Pod. I'm Alex. With me, as always, is my co host, Ethan. Tonight, we are working on self care with sick kids. So, we'll get into it in a little bit. It is a timely topic around here, but we are talking about how we keep ourselves well, both physically and mentally. But before we get into that story time and working on the Dad Bod, first, I want to remind you that all of our episodes are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a little bell when you subscribe that gets you notifications so you can get pop-up notifications on your desktop, your phone, wherever you want them to know when we've posted a new video, which is usually on Thursday nights. But that's a great way to help us out. All of our socials can be found on workingondadpod.com, which is our website, so as well as all of our episodes and a link to our YouTube channel. With all that said, Ethan, how you doing, man?
Been better. Not gonna lie, this is not my favorite day. If it weren't for our millions of committed listeners, I might have, taken a rain check. But you know, I am off tomorrow and Monday because my mother is in town for work into a long weekend. So I'm looking forward to seeing her and just making it through. So, what about you, man?
Awesome. I'm doing better than that. Let's
Good.
say,
Good.
the bar, you set the bar kind of low, but I'm clearing it. It's been a pretty good week around here. Potty training still going strong, all
Great.
that stuff. But with that, let's get into story time because then I can tell you exactly, what's going on. That's really exciting around our household. So, little backstory. My daughter recently, as all of you may or may not know who Taylor Swift is, I would assume. My daughter has recently gotten into Taylor Swift, not randomly. My wife is a fairly large Taylor Swift fan. I wouldn't say she's crazy or obsessed, but she really likes the music. She showcased it to my daughter. And of course, the Eras Tour is on Disney Plus. And so my daughter has taken to watching bits and pieces of that during her designated screen time. In fact, relating to the topic of this episode, one thing we did the last time she was homesick is we made a list of non-digital activities and digital activities. So things she could do non-digital, and she had to do 30 minutes of a non-digital activity to earn 30 minutes of a digital activity. And we called them digital because we include this thing called a Tony box, which is essentially just a speaker that she can plug headphones into and listen to Disney songs. So it's not all screen time because there's no screen involved in that. But she chose to just watch 30 minutes at a time of the Eras Tour for the whole day. Broke it up, 3.5 hours. That covered most of the work day for her digital experiences. Well, my wife got a wild hair that She wanted to take my daughter to go see the Eras tour. And I was like, aren't tickets crazy? And I looked at tickets, and we live about an hour and a half away from Hard Rock Stadium, where she'll be playing in October. You and I know the venue well. It's where our Miami Hurricanes, if you just listen to the cold open, it's where our Miami Hurricanes play. I'm sure my daughter will experience, she went as an infant to some games. I'm sure she will go down for some games in the future because as a Hurricanes fan, I will drag her into that misery. But my wife looked at tickets. I looked at tickets for them, and they started around $2,200. And we're talking like
Hmm.
general admission standing room. And we're like, okay, that's each.
Hmm.
Pretty
Hmm.
pricey. And then my
Yeah.
wife did some more digging and found that she could get tickets in Paris
Hmm.
for under $400 and
Okay.
did the math that even with 2 weeks notice, so if you're listening to this on Friday, the day after we record, exactly 2 weeks from now, my daughter and my wife will be going to the Eras tour in Paris, France. They are flying out on Tuesday night, spending several days in Paris, going to the show on Friday night, and coming back on Saturday, and somehow saving over $1,000 compared to driving an hour and a half to the show in Miami, Florida. So absolutely wild, but it gets better because my wife bought these tickets just today, and she was picking up our daughter for dance class from school, and she decided to tell her and record her reaction because we always love to get that kind of stuff. We've surprised her with a Disney World trip before, which for those that can't tell from geography, we're in driving distance of Disney World, so it's not as much of a like save up your life savings and go for a week kind of thing. We can actually do a day trip there. But we record her reaction. She gets really, really excited. She's like, "Yes, I love it. That's awesome." And my wife's like, "Where do you think we're going to go see it?" Her first guess actually surprised me. It was London. I was like, "That way
Hmm.
than I would have thought you would have guessed." Like, I didn't know you knew that many cities. Like, you really want to go to
Sure. Sure.
see the Golden Gate Bridge. You've been to New York City, you know Miami and Tampa, but that's about all of the like Taylor Swift caliber cities that I
Hmm.
know off the top of your head. Tell her it's Paris, and then tell her that it's going to be an overnight flight. And you could have given me 100 guesses on what she would be most excited about. And it would not have been building a blanket fort on the plane for the overnight flight to Paris. That is what she is most hyped about. She's like, I need to bring my pillows. I need to bring my blanket. We're going to build a pillow fort. My wife's like, okay, but did you hear the part where we're going to go see Taylor Swift? And she's like, yeah, that's awesome. But we really need to make sure that we bring the blankets because the blanket fort is going to be awesome, Mom. So yes, my wife dropped four figures on a Paris trip to see Taylor Swift, and my daughter is excited about getting on a plane and building a blanket fort overnight.
I mean, I would look at it this way. If she's that excited for the blanket fort, the main event's going to be even better. Or a real letdown. I don't know. But that's an awesome story. And I didn't know all of the details. I knew that was a possibility, but
Right.
wow, that's great.
I specifically didn't share the video with you yet in our
Sure.
group chats so that I could get your reaction to her blanket fort
Sure.
comment.
Yeah, no,
But
I
yeah,
appreciate it. No,
I'm
that's
excited for them.
yeah, that's fun. When you had mentioned yesterday that your wife was considering this trip, I told my wife, and she was totally jealous. But
Sure.
you did not share the economics of it, and it is wild
Yeah.
that it's that much cheaper with two flights and multiple night stays in
Here's the
Paris.
thing, even if it was the same price or we're talking like $500 more, like they're going to go to the Eiffel Tower and the
Oh yeah, no,
Louvre, and like we were in Miami 2 weeks ago for a
sure,
baseball
sure. I
game,
mean,
and we've
yeah,
been
no,
down, and we'll continue to go down there. Like, and so it's just like my daughter's going to get multiple days in Paris. She's super excited for croissants, which good for her. They have
sure,
great croissants there.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying that right for anybody that is French and wants to
Croissant.
be a jerk in the comments. You can come in and tell me that I'm pronouncing it wrong, but hey, Sorry, I know, and I don't feel like being that kind of person that says things like croissant and patatone
Oh, oh.
when
No,
talking
that's
about
cool though.
your
Yeah, and sure, yeah. Even if it was, within like $500 over, it would totally be worth it. But just that's wild.
yeah,
Just
it's
wild.
crazy, and I don't know exactly why that is. I'm sure I could have some theories, but I haven't looked into exactly why that is. But Paris seems to be cheaper than most of the other venues, but even places like Madrid, also in Europe,
Sure.
are magnitudes cheaper than some of the US locations.
Yeah. Wow. And is Miami to Paris direct?
Yeah. Yeah, they're direct from Miami, I believe. But
Mhm.
yeah, it should be it's a direct flight, so it should be fun. But yeah, just straight from Miami to
So
Charles de Gaulle.
remember in the group chat when I was talking about why I was really insistent on getting my kids passports so I wouldn't need an expedited situation?
Mhm.
This is it. This could have been it.
To be fair, I don't think this is the kind of emergency. Like it's like
Sure.
one of those things like this trip got booked because we have it, right? And we didn't get we never had an emergency situation. We went to Bahamas on a family trip and planned for it. And, we have until I think 2027 on both the kids' passports for that. So, um, but it is nice. It is nice to have.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, if you want to do something fun like that and you do have the means to do it, it is nice to not have to worry about whether the kid's going to get through customs or any of that
Mhm.
stuff.
Well, that is awesome. I hate to follow that up with the I don't
Why
really
don't you,
have
why
a
don't you bring us down here, bud?
yeah. So I am going to ruin the perfect segue by just saying my story essentially leads us into this topic. So as you know, we are recording on a Thursday night. My story begins last Friday around 11:30 a.m. Eastern say
Day-
Eastern time.
Daylight
Eastern
time.
time. Daylight time. Eastern daylight time. EDT.
Sure.
And my 19-month-old's preschool teacher calls and says that she has a 101 fever.
We're
So
good.
I have to go get her. And I do. And when I get there, one of her classmates' parents is also there because he too has a fever and was tugging on his ears. So she made a doctor's
Mm,
appointment, and turns out that he had an ear infection. My daughter showed no signs of ear discomfort, simply just she was warm and still totally full of energy. So then around 3 o'clock, my older daughter, my 4.5-year old's teacher called and said she's complaining about her eye being itchy and she says she has pink eye. And I said, I don't believe she has pink eye. She had a little bit of crust in her eye this morning, but I wiped it off and then I watched her for about 30 minutes and nothing came back and her eye looked fine. So I let her go to school. So the next day, my daughter the little one woke up with a fever again. So this is Saturday. We are able to see the pediatrician for 2 back-to-back slots, and pink eye confirmed on the older, and a double ear infection confirmed for the baby.
yay.
So we get prescribed antibiotic drops for the pink eye, and we get prescribed amoxicillin for the double ear infection. So we get the drugs, get home. My older daughter's starting to feel fine. My younger daughter loses a little bit of energy. Next day, still has the fever, still very low energy, not really eating. That was Sunday. On Monday, still had a fever, so she could not go to school, but the older one could because she had been on the drops.
Right.
So I stayed home. My wife and I both stayed home on Monday because the baby had been up until 3 a.m. And my wife didn't actually get out of her room until 5 because she would only sleep with one of us in there. So we both were home. Tuesday, she woke up still with a fever, not feeling good at all. And I finally got her down for nap. And then when she woke up from nap at around 3 p.m. on Tuesday, and we are 7 doses in to amoxicillin, I noticed that she has what looks like hives. So I call the pediatrician, and on that call, I'm getting a little bit of PTSD because, as you definitely have listened before to a previous episode, my 4.5-year-old is allergic to amoxicillin. And practically, that is a real pain in the caboose.
Yeah.
So we go to the doctor. He basically says, hey, you were right to bring her in. This is 50-50. This rash is either the beginning of the amoxicillin allergy, or it is a reaction to the virus in which she has. The only way to know for sure is to stop the amoxicillin, put her on a different antibiotic, and see if things clear up. But you got to keep her home again tomorrow to monitor. So keep in mind, today is Thursday. My daughter was home half of Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and she woke up doing better today. I'm pretty sure we were correct about the amoxicillin allergy. So now I've got 2 kids allergic to amoxicillin. She went back to school today. I was really worried because she had been super clingy. This sickness definitely, one, ruined our 17-day streak of her sleeping through the night again. So we've totally regressed. And we probably are back 6 months on the separation anxiety scale. And all of that is to say that the entire time, to lead into this topic, it was, how do I keep her energy up and happy, and also keep myself, and in my wife's case, safe, as we are fighting off 2 pink eye infections, which, as you know from our episode on March Dadness, it is very difficult to avoid getting pink eye from one kid, let alone 2, especially when one of them doesn't fully understand washing hands and not touching, and then the other one is 4.5 and can be a little bit of an a-hole sometimes. So
even if they fully understand it, they often
yes,
forget.
they do.
Conveniently or accidentally.
Exactly. So ultimately, to touch on the second aspect of I just discussed keeping myself healthy physically for the kid. Mentally, I was kind of losing it. In fact, because my kid was home and unreliable, I missed therapy this week. And then tonight, the 4.5-year-old was going crazy to the point where she was screaming, she was crying, she was yelling. She started hitting the glass shower door. So I lost my cool and I screamed at her, and then she screamed back at me, and then I screamed at her, and then the baby started screaming, and then my wife ran in screaming at me for screaming at them, and I screamed back at her. So needless to say, I did not keep it together.
So would you say you're in a prime position to talk about how to maintain one's mental health when your kids are sick?
Yes, I am.
So I'm going to cover how to do it, and Ethan's going to cover how
yes,
not to do it.
I am hoping what this taught us all is don't be like me. And that's the point of this show, to learn and to try to be better and talk through my problems.
There we go.
Yes.
Well, that's what it's for, especially on the weeks you miss therapy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is much cheaper.
Well, on that note, as I mentioned when we opened, I think there's 2 avenues here that we need to look out for, because as Ethan mentioned, it's really, really easy to get sick when kids are sick, because they want you. They want your physical attention. That's how they're comforted. Touch, being close when they don't feel well, especially when they're young. They very much just want to be held and they want to cuddle. My daughter, she's 5. She doesn't need that as much. She still likes it. She still likes being comforted, but not in the same sort of, for lack of a better term, infantile way that my son and my daughter did when she was younger. But it's tough because for my wife and I, and for you, we work from home. And so I think working from home, the barrier to taking a sick day just feels higher to me, right?
Hmm.
Like if I can get to my computer, then I'm sort of like I can work. And especially if the kid's home sick, I'm like I kind of want an excuse to like not
Yeah.
be dealing with her 24/7. And I say her because my daughter has been sick more often than my son. I don't know the mechanics or the science behind that, but she's usually the one that has been popping up with fevers lately. And my son has been fairly healthy, which has been surprising through all of that. But a couple of things that I do just to talk about the physical front, and this always gets tough, right? Working from home, especially, is you have to strike this balance where like I really want to make sure that I'm getting enough rest. I
Hmm.
don't always do a great job of prioritizing my sleep on normal days when no one's sick, and it becomes an even harder hill to climb when you're trying to cobble your days together. When you're trying to take time out to either pick up the kid, take them to the doctor's office, pick up the prescriptions, comfort them, get them snacks that would be packed in their lunchbox and administered by their teachers, right?
Hmm.
Those kind of things are tough. But then also like balancing that with like, I've got a job to do and work to do. And if I'm not taking a sick day because the kid's sick, which sometimes is a good option. If you have it, might not always be the worst idea
Yeah.
to take it. But if you're not doing that, then you've got to get your work done. You got to find time to do that. And you got to find time to sleep. And for me, what it really means, and this comes into sort of the second half of things, is it usually means I cut out a lot of the things that I like to do in the evenings to decompress, which can be watching a baseball game. I have an MLB.TV subscription and I live out of market of my team, the Atlanta Braves, so I can watch most of their games every night or at least listen to every single one of their games. So that's something that I like to do, or just watch any sports, depending on what season it's on, some show, some movie, or just decompress surfing the internet. And I usually have to cut that out because I usually have to get the chores done, get the kids down to bed, run back to my computer and finish up the things after the day. But I try best I can to be really, really diligent about still getting at least 7, if not 8 hours of sleep, because I know that if I'm dragging, that it's going to make it harder to take care of a sick kid, but it's also just going to up my chances that I'm going to get sick. Um,
So,
yeah. What about you?
so I, I will say what actually made this week even harder for me, and you actually didn't know about this, but I am one of the rare few, I think it's roughly 2% of men who get what they call cluster headaches. And if you have not heard of what a cluster headache is, it is essentially the pain of a migraine in one spot behind one of your eyes. And the problem with them is that there's really no cause or anything you can do to cure it, and they happen in cycles. And these last 9 days I have been in a cycle at roughly 12:30 at night because they do come on time. I actually in the last 9 days have had 6 of them, all between the minutes of 12:30 and 12:36 because it's important to note, and then one outlier at 10:30. But it's
Still
extremely,
not
yeah,
convenient for sleep.
not convenient for sleep, extremely debilitating. If I there's really only the only thing you can do is take either Advil, like a super dose of Advil or Tylenol, or you can inhale pure oxygen for about 10 minutes because some say that the reason one of the side effects during this headache is you're constantly yawning, even though you're supposed to stay still because the movement makes it worse. But if you're yawning, your face can't stay still, therefore your head can't stay still. So, the other option is just inhaling pure oxygen.
I never
I
heard
do
of
have an
that.
oxygen tank, but at 12:30 at night the other night when I'm sleeping on my sick kid's floor, because that's the only way she could sleep, and I'm literally woken up by this pain, and I have to not stumble out of her room then into my room to not wake up my wife, to then pop a bunch of pills so that I could go back to sleep. And then she wakes up again at 1 was not great. And all of this together was so poorly timed. And what made me think of that actually was that, you say you usually try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I think realistically, I usually operate on about 6 on a good day. And, it just, the rest was kind of impossible with my 19-month-old home, because the only thing that she could do while she was like clearly reacting to the amoxicillin allergy, was the only way she was okay was if I held her, which just
Yeah.
basically made it impossible for me to do anything else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that's really tough, but and it sucks, because when you're having something completely different, right? I know one time I forget which one of my kids was sick, but my wife had fallen and broken her elbow
I
outside
remember
on the
that.
concrete. And so and it was her right arm. She's right-handed. And so that made things tough. Because my son wasn't even walking yet at this point. And so a lot of time, he could crawl around, but he wanted to be carried a lot. And usually he wanted to be carried by mom. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
tough for mom to carry him. He's not fat, but he's solid. It's just like
Sure.
he's built like a little
Mm-hmm.
tank, dense little
Mm-hmm.
dude. And so it's tough. It's tough to carry him for extended periods of time, even when he was a baby. And so I definitely feel for that. I haven't had a lot of that experience where I have been the one where I've had something as debilitating, but on a more predictable note, some other things that I do, and I will caveat all of this by saying these are some over the counter vitamin supplements that I take. Before you begin any vitamin regimen, don't take this as medical advice. Please talk to your doctor, consult health professionals, yada, yada, yada. These are the things I do and why I do them. You can take it as something to take to your doctor to ask if it's a good idea or not. That is as far as you should consider it as advice to take to your doctor for your doctor to affirm or deny. But
Sure.
I normally start off when the kids are sick, even if like my nose or throat feels the slightest bit itchy, and sometimes that can be psychosomatic.
Sure.
I start taking zinc. And I
Mm-hmm.
take zinc because that is the active ingredient. If anybody's familiar with the product Zicam, that shortens the duration of your cold and the severity of it. That's the active ingredient. So I just take the zinc pills instead of buying the Zicam because it's cheaper to buy a whole big thing of zinc. Take some vitamin C, some vitamin D, some magnesium, just a bunch of things that worst case scenario, I'm like, I get some vitamins and minerals in me. I'm not taking anything like Tylenol when I'm not having
Mm-hmm.
symptoms, but just some
Right.
extra vitamins to sort of boost my immune system. And I also try to drink a lot of water. So those are the things that I try to do that seems to help, but it's also like because I'm doing it preventative, it's hard to know in sort of that controlled experiment of like, is this actually preventing me from getting sick or would I have not gotten sick either way? Tough to know. But those are
Yeah.
some things that I try to do physically: the sleep, the water, the vitamins,
Yeah.
to
My
try and keep myself as healthy as possible.
my go-to was to take emergencies, which is essentially, for those of you who don't know, just a little packet of a vitamin C and then a bunch of other things.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure there's a fair amount of calcium in that packet, though. So I stopped doing that because I am currently dealing with high calcium. So, however, the individual ingredients, like you just said, is probably a good alternative, because then I'm basically taking everything without the
Yeah.
calcium.
Yeah, and most of those kind of things you can buy like Nature's Made or
Yeah.
whatever,
Mhm.
over the counter at most drugstores, grocery stores, wholesale clubs, all that stuff,
Yeah.
whatever size you want. And some of those things we just had on hand because my wife needed them as supplements during one or both of her
Mhm.
pregnancies.
Yep.
So we definitely have a few of those things on hand, and we just kind of go through them.
Sure.
But I think the physically is both harder to control, right? You can only
Mhm.
control what you can control, which is those kind of things of just like doing things that you should be doing anyway, making sure you're getting the right nutrients in your body, making sure you're getting enough water, and making sure you're getting enough sleep. Like these are things I wish I was doing on every day that ended in Y. I don't always, but the
Sure.
kid being sick sort of makes me go, okay,
Mm.
this is super important. So I
Yeah.
need to do it. And I prioritize it because usually we're administering some medicine or something. And that's my cue to go, oh, yeah, take my stuff. Right. And that sort of
Mhm.
helps remind me of those kind of things. But the harder one, the one that you can probably have more control over, but is still kind of harder to do the steps is the mental health thing because I find you've talked about this already, how your mental health has just suffered this week because your kids are sick, because you're not being as productive, because you're very limited, because your daughter, excuse me, your youngest is clingy and all that stuff. Plus, you're going through those cluster headaches. It's tough even when like all those factors aren't there. If it's just like limiting your effectiveness on doing things, you're constantly being interrupted.
Yeah.
As I've mentioned several times before, like I have ADHD. And so a lot of the ways I work is like I have a lot of tasks for the day and I sort of have to pick what's most interesting so I can dive into it. And I can get into these sort of like laser focused sessions of like really deep work on something that I'm just trying to knock out. And I can go for like 2 hours straight, like hyper focusing on something. And if a 5-year-old comes in and is like, Dad, I can't find the TV remote,
Mhm.
I can sometimes maybe not have the most even keeled reaction, like
Sure.
proportionate to the question kind of thing of like, well, where was it the last time you put on a new episode of Bluey? Where did
Right.
you leave it? Is it exactly where it should be? Yep. Now I'm really frustrated that I had to get up and walk 12 feet. My
Yep.
desk is like on the other side of a bookshelf from
Yeah.
where she's sitting. So
That,
yeah,
yeah. And
it can be tough.
yeah. And it's one of those things where you mentioned earlier, it's good if you're able to take a sick leave to use it when your kid is sick. But like you mentioned with remote work possibility and just thinking there's too much to do, this was one of those weeks where it was knowing I was going to be off on Friday and Monday,
Yeah.
and then knowing that all of the tasks that I had, I knew that I could not just take days off to take care of her. So I had to like working around and with the sick kid. 3 meetings yesterday she joined me on. Luckily, I, am senior enough where if I need to take my kid with me to a meeting, they're just going to deal with it. And it's like, I'm not afraid of the repercussions of it, no matter how unprofessional some folks might say it is. It's just, I could either be here with a kid or, my work cannot get done. What do you want? So,
Yeah, and I run into an issue with where my job, you know, I'm the web publisher, right? The web manager. I manage the company I work for's website, and I work mostly as a team of one. I have one guy who works with me, but he works in a different time zone, and so he's out at like 1:30 my time, and he reports to me, and so I'm directing a lot of the different things that go on, and it just often makes me feel like when I want to take a sick day of like there's so many things that people are counting on me for that like I'm going to have meetings or things pop up or issues with the website and it's going to be like lighting a fire under it, and the industry that I work in is regulated very heavily, and so sometimes the lawyers will come in and go, this has to be taken down immediately, this is a legal, there are legal implications to this being up and we need to get it down ASAP kind of stuff. And I think in my mind, I don't want to say I overinflate my importance, but like I overthink how much people aren't going to be able to survive without me.
right.
And
Yeah, no, I
it's
think
not
that's,
it's not true, like in
mhm.
actuality, like because when I take vacations, a few weeks into this job, I took a vacation for a week to Norway. People survived, right?
Yeah.
Like And life goes on, the globe keeps spinning, everything's fine. But I think in those moments, I very much am reticent to say, hey, I really need to take the day. And especially because it's my daughter and she's 5, it's a lot of like, if she starts taking the antibiotics, right, and the fever's gone, but let's say we're in that 3-day period, she can't go back to school and things are being treated, but she's just home for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like she can get a lot of her snacks, wipe her own butt, get
Sure.
herself dressed, brush her own teeth, all these kinds of things. And so it is less hands-on. And because my son hasn't gotten sick, I don't think I think I would be more likely if my son was sick to take the time off. But my wife also tends to have a lot of flexibility in what her job responsibilities are. And so a lot of times the kids are like, I want mom. And so she'll work
Mm-hmm.
her schedule around too, and we trade off. But that's how I sort of segue into how we do handle the mental health thing. Is my wife and I, similar to how we've talked about like sleep training kids, and when my wife was nursing our kids in the middle of the night when they were younger and still nursing, you know, we never did the thing of like we had to trade off, right? Where this was your turn, this was my turn. We usually took a night at a time because we tried to make sure, and we translate this to when we have sick kids now, of like someone, it is their night and the other person gets good sleep and doesn't have to, goes to bed knowing that whatever happens with the kids, the other person's on it. And for us, that creates a huge relief. It creates a lot of situations where at 1 o'clock, we're not tapping each other on the shoulder going, who's dealing with this? If my wife's on there, maybe I wake up and I tap her on the shoulder and go, hey, crying. And then she handles it and I go back to sleep. And so in the daytime, we also try to do that where we very much try to divide and conquer. Because if we're both in there and we're both trying to handle it and we're both trying to deal with the kids, then everybody's mental health is suffering, ours and the kids. It's not that we can't co-parent at the same time. It's just that there is a benefit that even if I don't feel like I can be productive because the house is chaos and noisy, I could take a 15-minute walk, listen to a podcast, audiobook, baseball game,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, sort of get out of the house, clear my head. My wife often does the same thing. Or I also try to prioritize assuming that I'm healthy, taking whatever kids are healthy with me to the gym and continuing that normal routine so I can get my workout in. One, both physically, but also for me, going to the gym and lifting weights is as much a mental release as it is like a physical improvement exercise. And so
Yep.
those are kind of the things that like I try to have a few staples of like, okay, I'm going to try and get my workout in if I can. And I'm also going to try and carve out little bits of time to make sure that I am taking care of myself. And then other things like making sure all the dishes are washed and making sure the house is picked up. If I'm making snacks and finding remotes and attending to a sick kid and answering questions and having conversations while I'm up, I try to multitask. Okay, let's get these dishes washed in the dishwasher. Let's do this, clean this up. Things that I might typically leave until after the kids go to bed because I'm up, because I'm not at my computer, I'm not being productive. I try to knock those things out. Maybe I'll clean the litter box, take out the trash to the street way early, stuff like that, so that I can knock those chores out. And then once the kids have gone to bed, I am free to get back to the work that I need to do a little bit quicker without like feeling like the house is a disaster, everything's a disaster. That's obviously a benefit of working from home. But if you're not working from home and you have a sick kid at home, somebody's at home. And so whoever's at home, if they can do that and just sort of knock out those little things of like packing lunch for the next day for the kid, that kid or kids that are healthy, let's say it's day 2, day 3, they're going back, whatever, knocking out those things tends to ease my burden a lot, because then I know I can set myself up to make the next day just a little bit easier when I'm going to be dragging, tired, and potentially sick.
Yeah, no, I mean those are all good tactics, at least with the whole trying to multitask thing. normally, like if the older one's sick, that's pretty easy because I can plop her in front of the TV. I can still get my work done.
Right.
I can take care of some of those tasks. But when I physically have to hold the sick one the entire day, makes it a little more complicated. And, like you,
Is a carrier
for me,
feasible, or is she too big for that?
I want to say she's too big. I got to find the carrier and test
We
it.
got a
But I'm pretty
special carrier for, I don't remember what reason, but we got a second carrier after the infant carrier that was big enough for my daughter when she was 2. We don't really use it with my son as much. He very much wants to walk all the time, but I could see pulling that out with like an 18, 19-month old and just like, you want to be held? Great. You can hang on to me and we're going to wash some dishes together or something like
yeah,
that as a potential solution to keep your
sure.
hands free, to at least just sort of pick up a little bit.
Yeah, I gotta check out our carrier, see if she still fits in it. But it was one of those things where I didn't even think about it because it wasn't just that she
Sure.
needed to be held. It was like she just wanted to her body was like, I can't do anything but sleep on daddy. And
Sure.
that was tough. And with regard to, the ability to trade off nights sounds wonderful.
Mhm.
Recently, my wife got a real weekend, so she also works Monday through Friday, but she doesn't have the ability to work from home, and she also works on her feet
Mhm.
all day. So I kind of feel like if the kids aren't sleeping at night, I need to be the one that handles everything at night, and she will fight me on it. And for the most,
Yeah,
to her credit, she does. It ends up being more even than I'd like it to be, but part of me feels really badly when
sure.
I know that she's got to be on the metro before 8 a.m. or sorry, before 7 a.m. to be there by 7:30 to be on her feet for 7 hours working to commute home. And
And
I could
she's
have
got to get
been,
dressed. She's got to get
yeah,
herself ready. She's got to apply makeup. She's got to be the same level of presentable within a pretty small range every
right.
single day. You
Whereas
and I
I,
can
yeah,
wake up, roll out of bed, look like schlubs at drop off. I always look like a schlub at drop off because
oh
I'm
my
coming from
God.
the gym, right?
Yeah,
I'm sweaty in like workout, an extra large workout shirt that says
mhm.
train hard, win easy, and stuff like that. And I'm the schlubbiest dude. I found it at Goodwill and it works. But
Nice.
that's where I get all my workout shirts. I just get old t-shirts
Yeah.
at Goodwill for like $5 and
Yeah,
wear those out.
I have this is a free, not an advertiser, unfortunately, but I have two pairs of shorts that are essentially basketball shorts that I bought at Costco. They're Kirkland brand shorts, but
Heck
each
yeah.
one of the side pockets has a zipper that goes up,
Mm.
so nothing falls out of the pockets, and they have on the right butt cheek a back pocket, and so basically I've got my wallet, my keys, my preschool fob, my phone, my work phone, all on me in these basketball shorts, and I
Loving it
probably
up.
unhealthily will wear, because I've got two of them. You would say, Ethan, are you about to tell me you wear each one for a week, wash it, switch it, and then the next week? I wish I was that clean, but I'm usually at like 10 days or so of the same pair of shorts. But I don't, weirdly, I won't work out in them though, because I want to wear them all the time because they're so convenient.
Sure.
That went to for my jog. I
Sounds like
switch
they're
into just
stylish too.
they are stylish. They make my butt look great. Just
Okay.
ask nobody. And yeah, anyway, you know, free plug. If you can see those at your local Costco, get them.
Yeah.
But
But
speaking of workout shorts,
yeah.
do you want to use that segue into working on the dad bod?
Yeah. And before we start, we talked last week after the show was over because I felt like we went a little long and we were both like a little like depressing about it and
Sure.
talking about it. So I think tonight we're going to make an effort to tighten up the segment a little bit. Eventually, I have designs on this segment being a little bit different that because
Mm-hmm.
we get to our goals, right?
Yeah.
And I told Ethan off the air that it's like eventually, once I get down to the weight I want, I do want to intentionally try to like add back a little bit of weight in the form of muscle and sort of see how that goes and like change up the journey and talk with you
Yeah.
guys about it. But for the sake of this, try to sort of cut down on the just talking about the same old sort of life got in the way kind of things. I didn't track the calories as much as I needed to. So I think for
Sure.
today, what we're going to do is we're just going to simply go, all right, this was my weight last week. This is my weight this week. And if it went down, maybe highlight one thing inside of a minute that you did really well. And if it went up, highlight one thing that you're going to try to improve for next week. And we can sort of tighten it up that way. Do you want to go first, or you want me to go
Yeah,
first?
I've got a nice tight report. So last week I was 193.6. Today, in my full nude pre-recording weigh-in, I was 190.6. So that is down 3 pounds. Impressively, I was very cognizant of what I was eating because I knew I wasn't really able to work out with the kids home. Kid home. Yesterday, we did go for a shortened version of my 5K walk in between meetings. And, I answered some emails. She was in the stroller. Was great. Beautiful day. I also, you and I talked off air, but this might be the placebo effect, but I tried your little chia seed theory fact fiction. And I haven't felt as hungry. I think you might be onto something. I've had
I don't even think I'm onto something. I literally, I'm not trying to do what I did last week, but scientific studies show fiber reduces hunger. Who knew?
No science, nothing. Alex made this up. It's working.
Yes.
So just to let everybody know, Alex and I are both huge fans of cottage cheese with everything bagel seasoning.
Yes.
Chia seeds do not have a flavor. So when you have your cottage cheese with everything bagel seasoning and then some chia seeds, it doesn't change anything other than make me fuller. And it was great. So that's type one.
I'll throw this plug out there, if anybody wants to incorporate chia seeds in their diet, but things like chia seed pudding or overnight oats and throwing some chia seeds in there. If you want to do breakfast prep, maybe you got sick kids and you want to knock out breakfast in the morning and you don't want to have to cook something. Overnight oats. That is what my kids eat 4 days out of 5. Like some days they might choose yogurt or bagels, but most of the time they're eating oatmeal, chia seeds, peanut butter, raisins with a little bit of milk and water mixed in. And that sits in the fridge overnight and it's ready to go for them.
Nice.
So that's pretty helpful. I put chia seeds and I actually supplement with some additional fiber powder in my morning yogurt. Just because it's lower calories to do the straight fiber powder versus the chia seeds.
Sure.
But they're not crazy. I mean, 3 tablespoons is 150 calories. If 150 calories makes or break your diet, you're probably not doing the calorie counting right. You could cut out a beer and equal that.
Sure.
So good on you. For me, I actually win this week because I was 185.8 last week and I am this week 182 even. So 3.8 pounds. Mentioned some weight gain due to medicine recently. I think part of that was coming off, but I've kept up the fiber thing. It's really helped. Not a lot different. I haven't been like insanely cutting calories to lose 3.8 pounds, so I wasn't super worried about it. Like I had ice cream last night as a treat with my wife. We had a little date night, but been pretty happy with that. Still on my 6-week cut plan to, just go hard for 6 weeks. Obviously 180 is the goal, but I think secretly like 175 wouldn't be horrible. So like, I'm just going to keep pushing for 6 weeks or until I feel like I no longer want to be in a calorie deficit, whichever comes first.
I would like to say this on the air. We have a guys trip with 2 of our other friends coming up. Yes. I would like to be at my goal weight of 175 by our guys trip so that we can take a lot of pictures of me shirtless.
Heck yeah.
For the private stash.
Yeah, I will say that I try not to get motivated by things like that. And it's all talk because it's definitely entered my mind a lot. When I set the 6-week thing, I'm like, okay, well, we've got 11 weeks until that trip. So that would give me 6 weeks and then a couple weeks of buffer if I didn't quite hit it. And maybe I could go a little bit lower, but then I could practice maintenance for a little while. So when we get on the trip, my body's not reacting to an influx of calories because we're going out drinking, getting takeout, all those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Well, since I'll be taking the train and you'll be taking the plane, I'll try to remember to bring the chia seeds.
Okay. I think we'll stop at a grocery store as well. So we could always just buy some.
That's impossible.
Yeah,
Impossible.
they don't have grocery stores where we're
going. Every single item needs to be brought by me.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good quote.
Right. Well, with that, I think it's time to say goodbye to you guys for this evening. We appreciate you working on the Dad Pod with us. Remember, like, subscribe, visit our website, workingонthedadpod.com, where you can find all the links to all the things, including this episode as soon as it's posted on YouTube. He's Ethan. I'm Alex. Thank you, guys.
YouTube, why not MeTube?
All right. Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.